I wanted to quickly talk about how the left, and when I say left, I do mean a small portion of the left, but a portion of the left treated a cat who is running for Congress in Illinois' 9th district. They're within single digit striking range of being the person leading in the Democratic primary, which would be quite a big win for progressives if they were able to win. Somebody who does call themselves a democratic socialist to be able to win in this area, get another person in Congress, grow the progressive caucus, and grow the caucus of people who are talking about politics in a social democratic to democratic socialist tint, wanting, healthcare for all, more efficient and expansive public services, stuff like that. Either way, she had a foreign policy advisor who apparently described her as a, quote, firmly an interventionist who, and I quote, won't stop until Russia is made to pay for its crimes. Now, if you look at how this is reported, leaked emails, Kat is firmly an interventionist, foreign policy advisor says, and this is being reported by Dropsite News, is very interesting because it seems that they're trying to frame her position on Taiwan and Ukraine as if it's like a scandal. But when you read what her position on Ukraine is that you should continue to give Ukraine aid, and that once the war is over, we reinforce them so that the Russians do not attack again. It's actually a relatively moderate position. I will say that she doesn't seem to have any recognition for occupied territory, and like working with Ukraine to get that territory back is more pro-Ukraine than a lot of the politicians in DC who describe themselves as pro-Ukraine. But I also hear a lot of the same people whining about that position who also would never say, you know what, we just give up the West Bank for peace. They want to give up other people's lands and conflicts that they don't care about
Occurred
so
is
they
occurred.
can get lands and the conflicts they do.
Dream
It's
Canoe
silly.
got a tier 1 subscription. Less than 3.
Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. But I mean, people care about certain conflicts more than others, and that affects the sympathy they give to one people versus another. And this is true for some section of the left when it comes to Ukraine, where them fighting a war of self-defense, them fighting for national sovereignty, them fighting against an aggressive imperialist state who doesn't even recognize them as a people. How in that instance they look at it and say, oh, it's the warmongering position to support them. Oh, it's a right-wing position to support the Ukrainians' right to self-defense, even though Ukraine gave up its atomic weapons in response to us saying, hey, give up your atomic weapons and we'll give you security guarantees. And the left-wing position is fuck you. The left-wing position is pull the rug out from under them. The left-wing position is displace more people. The left-wing position is force more people off of their internationally recognized borders and concede to the aggressor state, reward the aggressor state. The left-wing position is don't put in place structures that can stop another war from happening. It seems like what some people think the left-wing position is not caring at all and virtue signaling about corpses as they continue to pile high. But maybe it's because the left, when it comes to foreign policy in the United States, is so attuned and so used to just spitting like spitballs from the sidelines that there's almost like a repulsive feeling of, oh, I've got to actually manage the wealthiest and most powerful state on the planet. Oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of the world community. I'm a socialist that takes a non-internationalist viewpoint. I'm a socialist that says, if it's with America, bad, right? This very simplistic viewpoint where for them, it's not about being against colonialism or being against imperialism. It seems to just be about virtue signaling against your own government, not making a global playing field that will be more fair to people, that will be more prosperous, where people's rights will be respected. And when you listen to Kat, I hear a lot more sympathy for that internationalist perspective of America as a member of nations than necessarily a king amongst nations. But if we're a member of nations, that does not mean we retreat and abandon our friends to be conquered by others who want to be the king among nations. And then when you go over to Taiwan, they just call it like China hawkishness to say, oh my gosh, they want to lose the ambiguity when it comes to defending Taiwan. I understand her position when it comes to getting rid of ambiguity. If it's ambiguous whether or not America will come to Taiwan's aid and you're trying to prevent a war by getting rid of the ambiguity, by getting rid of the fog, less fog of war could possibly remove some of the area for miscalculation, where China invades thinking America will do nothing, America then does something, and then we've got a showdown between two global thermonuclear superpowers. Whereas if it was more clear, it would allow the Chinese and the United States to more clearly assess the situation and not drive headfirst into a brick wall or, again, thermonuclear war. The best way to use American hard power is to prevent wars entirely. The best use of any army is to know that you will not need to fight a war. And I think that should be the centerpiece of Taiwan policy. Not the idea that we're going to like launch some campaign from Taipei to Beijing and there's no interest. But if the Taiwanese people want to continue to manage their democracy that they developed after they overthrew their dictatorship through peaceful transition to a democratic process, you know what? That's up to them, and we can assist them in that process. We can also do our best to decrease militarization if China wants to do that, but that will require agreements across the aisle, agreements across the Pacific. That will require us to work with the Chinese to communicate on a peer-to-peer basis when it comes to our armies. But, I mean, this is something we've done since Taiwan became what it is today. I mean, even before it made its democratic transition, and thank God it did. And so these two positions of which would seem to be of moral clarity in my mind of Taiwan has a right to self-defense, Ukraine has a right of self-defense, and when we make promises, we should keep them. Both of them are defending their nations. Both of them have a right to defend their nations, and both of them are relatively struggling for good things for their people, right? This is portrayed as a very negative, this is like, oh my God, she's an intervention. This got like 1.7 million views. It got dragged around a lot. Now, mind you, the response Kat did to this was to fire the foreign policy advisor. It seemed they're no longer, this individual is no longer on our staff, is what she said. So fired them, and then she clarified her position on Ukraine and Taiwan, which seemed to be her not giving an inch. And I'm very thankful that she didn't. Let's listen to what she has to say.
Today, report.
Mind you, she's a 26-year-old Palestinian progressive. So I would say that she really has the ability to communicate with young people from her position than a lot of other politicians who have tried to communicate on these issues in a similar fashion.
Today, reporting revealed an email sent by someone on my staff detailing my foreign policy. The answers surprised a lot of people, including myself. I want to be really clear, I did not know of that email's existence, and I would not have approved the language in said email. I was also not aware of certain aspects of this individual's background, and they are no longer on our staff. But part of the reason this email was so surprising is that I have been remarkably clear and open about my positions regarding foreign policy. In fact, if you want to read our foreign policy platform, as well as our page on a free and sovereign Palestine, you can go to catforillinois.com/issues. But let me be clear about where I stand on what was actually in that email. First off, the email describes me as an interventionist, which is not true. I have no idea why he would say that. I have never described myself as an interventionist. I am anti-war, anti-genocide, anti-imperialism, and anti-intervention, which is why I hold the positions I do. I have always believed and said that we should lead with diplomacy and humane foreign policy. I've been endorsed by Peace Action, the largest grassroots peace network in the world, and I firmly denounce Trump's moves to militarily intervene in Venezuela, Canada, Greenland, Iran, and elsewhere. Before I get into any other specifics, I want to add an initial caveat, and that's that military intervention is an absolute last resort. We need to lead with diplomacy. We shouldn't force regime change. And especially post-Trump, we need humane foreign policy. Now, my leading principle in international affairs is the right to self-determination. When it comes to Ukraine, I believe we should continue arming the Ukrainian people. Wars of aggression are illegal. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a war of aggression. That is an international crime Putin is a despot and he will not stop with Ukraine. We can support Ukraine by providing arms, ideally paid for through the seizure of Russian oligarch assets, but not with U.S. troops on the ground. Similarly, I believe
this is a better position than Biden. This is a better position than Biden, even, I would say. Like this is something that was not even clear during the Biden administration, whether they should or should not seize the assets, and pressuring the Belgians to seize it with Euroclear. Like, this is some more clarity than even more establishment figures in the Democratic Party, who tend to just be quiet about it and just say whatever bullet points the lobbyists tell them to say or somebody else has.
That politically, we should adhere to the one China policy. But we should also eliminate strategic ambiguity when it comes to aiding Taiwan, so that way it can defend itself without putting U.S. boots on Taiwanese soil. The last thing any of us want is a war with China. This is an effort to make sure that doesn't happen. So that way we can make time to work towards diplomatic solutions.
Hey, Lonerbox, thanks for the raid. Look at that. The perfect person to raid me during this segment.
Without putting U.S. boots on Taiwanese soil. The last thing any of us want is a war with China.
By the way, you might have to threaten U.S. boots on soil with Taiwan in order to prevent a war. You raise the stakes like was done with Berlin to make it so that nobody would even really consider the act.
Putting U.S. boots on Taiwanese soil. The last thing any of us want is a war with China. This is an effort to make sure that doesn't happen. So that way we can make time to work towards diplomatic solutions. We need to reinvest in those diplomatic solutions, not just between China and Taiwan, but the U.S. and China as well. We live in a globalized world. We need to work towards being partners with China in trade and innovation. But that's only possible through diplomatic solutions and international law. I know these are all controversial subjects, but self-determination is necessary in a democratic, globalized world. And that is true whether it's Taiwan, Ukraine, Palestine, or anywhere else. Invasion and aggression cannot be tolerated. The other caveat here is that any military aid for any reason must be conditional. I don't care if it's Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, or Mexico. If weapons paid for with our tax dollars are suspected of being used to commit crimes against humanity or war crimes, we need a full arms embargo. We have to make sure that war criminals are held accountable and put measures in place to ensure that those crimes are never committed again. I will never blindly vote for military aid. Every single bill will be a separate consideration that I will deeply think about and convey why I voted for or against it. I will not vote to deploy troops for forever wars, and I will continue to respect international law. But once again, any military aid, any military intervention must be an absolute last resort. And our troops cannot be used for an imperial agenda that will make other parts of the world worse. We need to focus on making our country better. And part of that is integrating into a globalized world. The American people are sick of our tax dollars being used for bombs instead of healthcare. We are sick of blind intervention and the military-industrial complex siphoning prosperity from us and the rest of the world for a quick profit. You may agree or disagree with me on these issues, and that's fine. But this is where I stand, and I wanted to make sure it's clear.
Okay, so I'll be blunt. This is the most moral clarity I've seen any left-wing, and I would say leftist left-wing, candidate running for office making on the issue of Ukraine and Taiwan. Period. End of paragraph. Like, no notes, no commentary. Like, I could say you can take out a buzzword here or there that kind of annoys me, but at the end of the day, this is the most moral clarity we've seen from any leftist with a decent chance of actually seeking and gaining higher elected office. And when I say better than anyone, I mean better than Rashida Tlaib. I mean better than Ilhan Omar. I mean better than anything Jamal Bowman said when he was in there. I mean better than Zoran Mamdani. I mean better than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You want to listen to how she sounded when she said, would ask questions at the Munich Security Conference? Mind you, she went on to say much more, but it was not with moral clarity. And this is at a much bigger stage in front of many, many more people. And this was talked about by Benny Johnson and many other people to lambast her when she was asked about the question of Taiwan. And you can see the edits that like right wingers put together. This is a right wing edit of her talking and trying to answer the question. They like add little like Billy Madison clips.
And to all of you, and Congressman, I'll start with you, would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, you know, I think that this is a...
Today, Junior!
This is, of course, a very long-standing policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
So she didn't answer the question, really. She just said it would be nice if we could avoid that. She doesn't want to answer that difficult question because number one, it could be because she doesn't know what to say. It could be that. It could also be that answering that question is going to come with blowback. If you say no, then it looks like you're saying abandon Taiwan. You look like you're saying abandon 25 million people to their fate. You look like you're saying like basically leave them out to dry. And that really America's all bark, no bite when it comes to standing up for our allies. On the other end, if you say yes, then you're going to get some pushback from some parts of your left flank. Some people will try to describe you as a warmonger. And if you don't describe it correctly, a lot of people might actually consider them to be true. If you don't phrase it in a specific way to make very clear the circumstances upon which they would be deployed and the purpose of troops being there and maybe even stop a war to begin with, having a small contingent, a trip line force, if you will. So instead of choosing to either piss off that section of the base, which might end up being the correct answer considering the relevance they actually have in politics, and the fact that they would probably only be happy with an abandonment of Taiwan to begin with, she decides to tread a line where she doesn't answer that difficult question. The hard answer should be, the public commitment should be generally 80% with 90% lack of vagueness, yes. Not all the way, because you want to keep the status quo to maintain a certain amount of stability, but 80-90% the answer should be yes. Yes, America should do that under that circumstance in order to do what she's saying. She says we want to avoid it from happening in the first place. What stopped the Soviets from taking Berlin during the Berlin airlift, Berlin crisis, all of that? It was the threat of a wider war being not worth what they would gain. So what you need to do with Taiwan is make it not worth it to them economically, not worth it to them when it comes to casualties, and that there is a decent chance, a very significant, if not a majority chance, that they would fail the invasion to begin with, meaning they'd pay an economic cost, a cost of life and blood, a cost of national prestige, as well as possibly leave the war unsuccessful, which could, depending upon how much, Xi Jinping puts upon the party's responsibility to reunite the country, which he's put a lot of emphasis on that, could actually start, at least in the eyes of those who want to keep power, a crisis of belief and trust in the Chinese system. And so if you can make it so the economic cost, the cost in life and blood, and the risk to the operation is so high, maybe you can avoid a war altogether. And it'd be really good to avoid a war altogether because Taiwan is not only a small island off of quite close to China. It is also one of the densest countries in the planet, and the densest country on the planet if you exclude the mountainous regions of the country. Meaning that any long-range bombing campaign would probably be very destructive when it comes to civilians. So either way, whether or not Kat would perform just a little bit better or somewhat better into this environment, it is a different environment. Maybe she would perform worse for all we know. But Kat delivered her message in support of Taiwan and in support of Ukraine more clearly. If she was asked this question, maybe she would react differently, but the same tempo, the same pattern, the same beat that Kat marched to in her answer should be the beat that AOC marches to. And when asked questions like this, you give the hard answers. You don't go to Munich to make a debut on foreign policy, to talk about your stance, to then just kind of tiptoe around it. If you're making your debut on foreign policy, make your foreign policy debut. She should have had some expectations for these types of questions. I will tell you, though, this response given by Kat, while it was satisfactory to me, it was not satisfactory to everyone on the online left. There were a few people who reacted to this negatively. We'll give some negative shout outs, call outs, I guess you could say, quickly. Max Blumenthal, of course, was not happy. They stopped for a second to stop, justifying and Russia's attacks against Ukraine and pumping out just complete fucking nonsense about Ukraine, to come out and condemn this candidate more pro-war than AOC. She cloaks hardline neocon positions on Russia. Hardline neocon position. Her position is give them aid. Hey, look, the leader of Code Pink. My goodness. Mark Ames, of course. And Mike from PA, the knuckle dragger of the online left. That's his official title. Imagine being 26 and deciding to tank your entire career because you want to be a warmonger and hawk against China. Fucking back shit. To be clear, Mike thinks that giving Taiwan the means to defend itself is a warmonger position. That's warmongering. It is warmongering to try to give Taiwan the means to dissuade an invasion, to do nothing and to let Taiwan to be invaded and let one of the most dense urban environments be carpet bombed and missile striked and drone striked. That's not warmongering. That's good left-wing activism. But to do something to prevent it, that's warmongering. My God. Mike from PA, I remember arguing about him about what the condition of women would be in Afghanistan once we left. I said it would be worse. He said I was talking like the CIA. And then he gave me CIA data, literally data from the Central Intelligence Agency to try to disprove my point. This is not somebody that you want on your side. In fact, I would say if Mike from PA disagrees with you, he's a better Mearsheimer test than a Mearsheimer test. And the Mearsheimer test is whatever Mearsheimer predicts, bet against it. Mike from PA would be a better tested Mearsheimer test. So I'm just going to say the idea that her supporting Ukraine or China or Taiwan against aggression is going to be her death blow, that's going to tank her career, really shows that you are politically isolated. Come on. Do you ever knock on people's doors and they say, oh my God, we're going to send weapons to Taiwan? Oh, I would never support a progressive that would do that. It's your small clique of activists that want to abandon Taiwan. The majority of Americans either want to continue to give Taiwan aid. Hell, more Americans now want to come to Taiwan's defense in the event of a war than at any other point in American history. To think that this is the point to say, nah, let's just abandon them entirely. Let's make the risk of war more likely just between Taiwan and China. Clueless. But it isn't just these accounts. It is also, of course, the biggest left-wing streamer on Twitch.
If Taiwan is invaded, I want to ensure that we've codified passive support to sell Taiwan weapons if Congress wills it, so Trump just can't overrule it, or whoever the president is. That's in Congress's hands, and that we can militarily step in to defend Taiwan with naval fleets for interception and selling weapons.
No way. Just let the missiles hit Taipei, dog. Look at the chat. Oh no, Fed. Only a true worker would let drones hit Taipei and kill the public. A true ally of the working people would let the ballistic missiles slam into the child's daycare center. A real ally of working people would, look, China wants its empire, Russia wants its empire, and there are US leaders that want its empire, okay? You don't just choose what empire meets your aesthetic more. If something matches a current locality's like desires more, i.e., the Taiwanese people actually want a democracy where they have a free society, you know, they're able to vote in elections, they're able to marry who they want to marry, they're able to have a free society. If that's what they chose to do, and only through working with the United States can they preserve that, what's the problem? We're not aggressing on China. We're not saying let's take Beijing, let's end communism in China. We're not doing that. But to defend Taiwan, to give them the means to defend themselves, no, that's too much. The end result must be China takes Taipei. The end result, you don't need to counter your lack of nationalism for your own country with an overabundance of nationalism for another, okay? You can support other countries, but there is no inherent need for China to have Taiwan. There is no inherent need for it. We can support them, and it is in a warmongering position to support them with the defensive means, protect against a country that is actively saying 24/7, 365 days a year that they want to conquer it. And that either they come back to them peacefully or they'll come back to them under missiles and drones and artillery strikes.
Genuinely asking, what's the issue here? Coming out with a firm stance that you will defend Taiwan militarily if invaded, that is not like that. That's a red hot, totally red alert. What are you? A lot of people yell at me.
He has no clue what to say.
Because of my conversations with Matt Duss. That is firmly to the right of Matt Duss. That is firmly to the...
Dog, what is this conversation? What is this? That's to the right of Matt Duss. Do you guys know who Matt Duss is? We've had Matt Duss on the show before. He's Bernie Sanders' former foreign policy advisor. But when you say you're right to Matt Duss, he's saying that like he's Ben Gavir or some shit, dude. That's Matt Duss. He's a lefty. He is a left winger. She might be more aggressively pro-Taiwan than Matt Duss, but that means literally nothing. Is that how we measure everything in the world? Oh, is this more left wing? Oh, that's so it's good. Oh, is this more right wing? Oh, that's so it's good. Oh my God. No. Either supporting Taiwan and trying to prevent a war through deterrence is a good objective to achieve, or it is not worth it, right? That could be left wing, that could be right wing, that could be motivated through wanting freedom of navigation throughout the Pacific, that could be motivated through ideological reasons, believing that the Taiwanese people have a right to self-defense, that could be motivated through self-interested reasons from the chip trade. But ultimately, it's the Taiwanese who get to determine that. Why is it that he's so allergic to this? Well, here's a question. Should Iran stop providing Hezbollah and Hamas with missiles? Is that warmongering of them to do? And this is a question that would be specifically to Hassan, because some people would say that you need whatever power you can to support your own sovereignty and your own independence. And I've heard a lot of arguments that ultimately, when Iran goes down, who are the Palestinians going to have in their corner, right? So my question is, why don't the Taiwanese get a right to choose if they want to have America in their corner? The Ukrainians got a right to choose. The Cubans chose the Soviets during the Cold War. I mean, like, look, if you're going to say that it's wrong that the United States can go in and black bag Maduro and choose the future of the Venezuelan people and their energy production at the barrel of the gun, with Delcy Rodriguez going hand in hand, keeping Chavismo alive as this kind of this bloated carcass bouncing around for U.S. investors, if that is something that we condemn and say is bad, why would it be good if a bunch of people who don't want to be dominated by Beijing, like, we just abandon them to the wall because it's warmongering? What is this? This is aesthetics. This isn't If we can prevent a war through deterrence, then we can prevent a war through deterrence. We've done it with South Korea. We've done it with Berlin. We've done it before. We can do it again. What is it about these 25 million people that makes them less significant than the millions in Korea, the millions in Berlin, the millions in Ukraine, the millions throughout Europe? What is it about these 25 million people that make them less significant? Hell, there's an argument to be made from a self-interested point of view that they're more significant. But from a moralistic stance, to react to a lefty being like, I think that they have a right to self-defense and we can assist them in that, as, oh my God, that's the right of Matt Duss. Completely disconnected from the foreign policy conversation. We need to evolve past this if the left is going to be taken seriously on foreign policy. People like Kat are the type of people, a 26-year-old Palestinian Gen Zer, this person is quite an image for progressivism going forward in the country. I think it's a good image for progressivism going forward. And if that image is paired with, well, of course, to support Palestinian self-determination, just like in Ukraine, just like in Taiwan, just like in Western Sahara, it could be any number of peoples that could be included in this conversation. But all of a sudden, because it angers the Chinese, we need to, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Oh my God. Hassan does not play for the NBA. He does not need to go over there and say, like, Hong Kong wanted it. Like, he doesn't have a responsibility to do that. He doesn't. Why do we need to be so groveling when it comes to these territorial claims by the Chinese? It's not like the Chinese are the only country on earth that make maximalist territorial claims on the peoples around them.
Right.
Not to mention, I'm sick of the just the shitty Civil War comparisons from people like Hassan to compare. Well, the American Civil War, yeah, Taiwan didn't have slaves. Okay, that's not a comparison. Also, Taiwan evolved to a higher standard of living with a civil society, an open society, than much better in the quality of life when it comes to China, generally speaking. You can't say that about the Confederacy. There's no comparison. But that's the comparisons we get from Hassan, because that's the comparisons we get from a lot of left-wing content creators when it comes to the issues of Taiwan and Ukraine, and that's why they will continue to not be taken seriously. Thankfully, though, people like Kat can be taken seriously. That's why she's polling in double digits within a single-digit fucking striking distance of the main person leading in the Illinois Democratic primary, and that's why Cenk Uygur got 2 or 3%. There's a seriousness in which how a content creator engages in an actual political force, and she's engaging more like a political force than a podcaster. Probably why she has to have a respectable foreign policy position, because she has to take this seriously, because it isn't a club.
Matt Duss. That is firm.
Oh, I can't believe you're to the right of Matt Duss. I'm just sorry. It's so disconnected. To the right of Matt Duss. Oh my God. To the right of Matt Duss, Bernie's foreign policy advisor. How much more aggressive can we get? Will we get to Elizabeth Warren levels? Oh God. Come on. Calm down. Okay? Pack it up. Oh God. Soon we'll be like Ayanna Pressley.
People yell at me because of my conversations with Matt Duss. That is firmly to the right of Matt Duss. That is firmly to the right of most foreign policy analysts in the United States of America.
That's not true, but okay.
It stems entirely from a place of being green, completely uneducated. If you think that this is like a...
Dog, he's so fucking ignorant, and he's so bold about it. He got Ukraine wrong like a motherfucker, never was able to correct course, and ever since then, it's just been a hodgepodge of just bouncing around on this position, unable to reevaluate how he got it so wrong and how he didn't have an answer. He still doesn't have an answer on Ukraine. You talk to fucking Hassan for an hour on Ukraine, you will walk away from it still not knowing what the fuck this dude believes. Actually, now, should we send Ukraine military aid to surge and pressure the Russians? What should we do now? What's his position now? Because the position of, let's not fuel the fire, he abandoned that. He abandoned that when Trump became president, and it didn't fucking work. He says, well, we can't just cut him off. We can't just stop saying, okay, so fuel the fire, I guess? He completely reversed his position. He didn't announce, he didn't say, okay, this is why I'm changing my position. And now he's coming and talking about this person who sounded much better than AOC did at the Munich Security Conference, sounded much better than any progressive when it comes to talking about the issues of Taiwan or Ukraine. And he calls them green and inexperienced? Come on, dude.
A fully fleshed out worldview that she is explaining. It's literally just being a 26-year-old.
That's insulting. Oh, she's just a dumb kid. Oh, she supports Taiwan because she's a dumb kid. Anybody who is older or experienced would obviously know that Taiwan is a part of China. Beijing shall rule. Death to Taiwanese democracy. Right? Anybody over any 27-year-old would clearly be able to see the subtext to lead us to that conclusion.
Abu Ghazali did not respond to a request for comment, but a source close to the campaign told Dropside that the advisor's emails did not accurately represent her views, saying Kat is committed to taking on authoritarianism, but vehemently against the military-industrial complex and a continuation of failed U.S. intervention approaches. Yeah, but even then, it doesn't matter. Her statement on... Stop. She is definitely a very bad foreign policy advisor. That much is clear. Many of these people, many Americans are still Americans. Even if they're Palestinian Americans, they're still fucking American.
See that? See what it is? Dumb kid. She's Americoid. Like, there's no points being made here. His points are, that's more right-wing than Bernie's foreign policy advisor, which is both not true and isn't a point. She's an American and she's a dumb kid. Okay.
And they don't factor in foreign policy at all into their approach, with the exception of Palestine.
What do you mean you don't factor foreign policy? Her whole statement was about foreign policy.
And her Palestinian background should have caused her to be a lot more, to have a lot better fleshed out worldview.
Okay, now that's anti-Palestinian. I'm sorry. I don't know what you want to call that. That's an anti-Palestinian statement. You can't say, "Oh, you're Palestinian. Why don't you want to give weapons to Taiwan?" As a Palestinian, you must have come to the conclusion when a country bombs you, you just give up all your weapons. When a country threatens you, you roll over. That's the conclusion you came to as a Palestinian. You're a Palestinian? Oh, you should then want to abandon Taiwan. You're Palestinian? Oh, then you shouldn't want to surge weapons to Ukraine. Oh, you're Palestinian? So then this is your preordained position because you're of this. You're not Palestinian. You can't speak to that, Hassan. I'm not Palestinian. I can't speak to that. But I certainly know that saying, my God, you should know better because you're Palestinian. And as a Palestinian, you should know that Taiwan shouldn't get support, that there shouldn't be this type of deterrent. Like, this is the thing. Hassan's like a communist, right? He's not like a socialist only. He's like a communist. And he's been pretty open about that, Marxist dialectics, buying into the whole shebang. And he knows quite a bit about the Cold War. Follows different, coups America did, talks about it quite significantly. Good. We should have coverage of that. We should be open about that. America should not be determining other countries' governments for them. But it is interesting that the entirety of the Cold War was largely tinted by the threat of overwhelming annihilation through atomic hellfire. And through that, we were still able to hold on to Berlin despite it being surrounded on all sides by the Soviets. Why? It seems that you can build deterrence. And if we can build deterrence in a city surrounded on all sides, how can we not build deterrence in an island that you would actually have to pull off a successful military landing in order to conquer? That has an up-to-date military, an air force, and a desire to keep the status quo, where they have free elections and have a free society. Oh, she's a Palestinian. She should know better. Come on, dude. Let's not use identity like a weapon.
Especially on foreign policy.
Those Palestinians should know better. By the way, if you want to know how he comes to these types of positions, it's probably because this type of socialist thought leaders that he takes inspiration from is this guy, like Yanis, who not only gave great glory to the collapse of the Greek economy, but also is a huge proponent of the Ukrainian Nazis idea. Oh, we don't support Ukraine. Don't support the Ukrainian Nazis. The Nazis. Oh, the Nazis. These are the type of people he's bringing on stream to go back and forth with him on a foreign policy viewpoint and also challenging him on supporting people in the Democratic Party. These are the people pointing him towards not supporting who the Democrats nominate in 2028 and continuing to point people like him towards abandoning the Ukrainians. So you want to know how he got there? The Greeks. It's always the Greeks. Oh, also, last thing I wanted to say before we wrapped up, here's an AIPAC ad that was just released against her. And instead of concentrating on the fact that AIPAC is right now trying to make it so she can't win the Democratic primary, desperately pushing to stop her from a Palestinian getting into Congress, a young Palestinian getting into Congress who is against AIPAC, against AIPAC's influence in politics, and is very, very, very critical of Israel. At the same time that they're releasing ads against her, mischaracterizing her, is the same time that we're jumping on her for supporting Ukraine and Taiwan's right to self-defense. But I guess that only applies to one people. And she abandoned her identity once she believed it applied to others. Not abandoned her. That's a mischaracterization of Hassan. Didn't abandon her identity. She didn't properly channel it.
Kat Abu-Ghazaleh says she's a progressive champion, but what do we really know about Kat? She moved to Illinois just 2 years ago. Kat Abu-Ghazaleh supported Marco Rubio for president, said she was to the right of Donald Trump on Social Security and healthcare, and her campaign is being funded with tens of thousands of dollars from right-wing donors to Republicans and Donald Trump. Who is the real Kat Abu-Ghazaleh? We don't really know.
So you want to say something interesting here. Go back here. Marco Rubio's my candidate. Right to Donald Trump on Social Security and healthcare. 2016. She is 26. She was like fucking 16 years old. She was 16 years old. AIPAC is literally like when you were a minor, you supported somebody that wasn't progressive. Get out of here. This is AIPAC cancel culture. This is AIPAC smearing. This is scumminess. And it also shows if there is something to dig up on Kat, they couldn't find it. Because the best they could find was when she was literally in high school, she flirted with conservative ideas. Guess what? That's part of growing up. That's part of becoming a person, is to explore different ideas, self-reflect, think, and it shows also she has the ability to reflect and change her mind. That she didn't just get given beliefs by her parents, she actually reflected to get to the position that she has. Maybe that's why her position of self-determination leads to support for the Palestinian people, the Ukrainian people, and the Taiwanese people. The left needs to get serious about foreign policy. And whether or not Kat wins on March 17th and Illinois 9th, and this can act as a formal endorsement of Kat, by the way. Whether or not she wins that, she is going to have a storied career, and she has a bright future ahead of her because simply by having a head on her shoulders in this movement, she is quite a bit ahead of some other people that we have to associate with.